You've had a busy weekend.
I have. I went to the beach.
You had the chance to get away, relax,
hang with 20 young adults.
You just had to race home to get the podcast done. We got a great podcast today.
Hello and welcome to the Resilient Lineage podcast, where we reflect on the past, anticipate the future, and discover what God is up to today. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Milo. And we're usually pretty good about having our podcast queued up and ready to go. Mm-hmm. Usually a Saturday or Sunday is when I do all the editing and get everything scheduled to go online. But we are literally 3 hours away from when this podcast posts.
All great things.
And we had actually recorded last week and just weren't happy with how it turned out.
Right.
We've got a variety of plates spinning. You got some going in your world. I got some going in my world. And so anyway, the episode we planned is not the episode we're going to do today.
Right.
Today, I had the chance to interview Sam Brasfield. And
shout out to Sam.
Yeah, I
was not here.
You weren't here. We were trying to get you on the podcast, but your availability and his availability did not line up.
But yours did.
But mine did. And so I had the chance to interview him on my own. He says hello.
Hi, Sam.
He wishes he could have been there, but it was a really, really great conversation.
Good.
So just real quick, let me kind of give you the bio, because we don't go into his bio. He talks a little bit about his military service and some things, and in our conversation, but the bulk of what we talk about, we don't really get into all that he's accomplished. So I'm going to read his bio really quick.
Go for it.
So people have a sense of who he is. So he enlisted in the United States Navy in 1988 as an aviation electrician's mate. Then in 1995, he was selected into the enlisted commissioning program. So that's a transition program so that folks that were enlisted then become naval officers. He graduated summa cum laude from Auburn University with the Bachelor of Science in Aviation Management, earned a Master of Science degree in Defense Analysis, particularly in an area of special operations and low-intensity conflict from the Naval Postgraduate School. That was in 2008. When we met him, he was the CTF 68 Deputy Commodore, and he took that job in 2021, which is when we met him in Spain. We were stationed in Spain with one another. He served on an MHC 62, the USS Shrike. That's when he became a surface warfare officer. He was an officer in charge for 3 detachments at EOD Mobile Unit 2. They deployed twice to Operation Iraqi Freedom. He also served as the assistant program manager for the Special Operation Forces Electronic Countermeasure at HQ US SOCOM, deployed multiple times to OEF and OIF, which is Operation Iraqi or Enduring Freedom, and then Operation Iraqi Freedom. He was the executive officer and commanding officer of the Naval Diving and Salvage Training Center down in Panama Beach, U.S. Navy's supervisor of diving at NAVSEA OOC. I mean, I could go on and on and on. He, as I said, he was an EOD officer. He was a diving and salvage officer. I mentioned the surface warfare officer, naval parachutist, and later enlisted aviation warfare specialist. I mean, what he's accomplished is incredible. He has a Bronze Star, Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the Meritorious Service Medal with 3 gold stars, a Joint Service Commendation Medal, the Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Joint Service Achievement Medal, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medal with 3 gold stars. And I should say the Joint Service Achievement Medal has 1 bronze oak leaf, combat action ribbon, and then there's other personal unit and campaign awards. So this is somebody who has had a wealth of experience.
And a father. And a husband. You could just...
Yeah, his wife, Ren, is a wonderful lady. His son, Peyton, and Hampton are just 2 really stellar, good young men. He's just a really nice guy. And when we found out that he was on this Appalachian Trail, it was actually her mom mentioned. She said, "You should see if he wants to be on the podcast." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'll have to reach out to him." And we did, and had the chance to get him on the
podcast.
And so
pretty rad.
What we're going to do is we're going to transition here in just a second, where then him and I, get into our conversation about the journey he's on and this transition in life, and how it's kind of serving a particular transition point for him. So, do you have anything you want to share? Because you haven't even
I can't even wait to listen.
Yeah,
so I will be with you guys in 3 hours, listening to this on Apple Podcast and rating it.
Yeah. So go ahead and we'll go ahead and just slide right into this episode. Here we go. Sir, or I'm not supposed to call you sir.
It's Sam, or hi-ho.
Or hi-ho. Man, this is when you set out on the adventure you're on right now. We're friends on Facebook, and Bethany, she's usually first to Facebook in the morning, and so she kind of gives me my morning Facebook brief.
Nice.
And she goes, "Hey, have you seen what Sam Brasfield's up to?" And I was like, "No, what?" And she goes, "He's doing the Appalachian Trail. Guys should get him on the podcast." And I was like, "Yeah, we should." Okay, so for our listeners, one of the things that when I think of you, there's two qualities that come to mind: attitude and adventure. Like you have just always, by perception, you like work at having a great attitude, because I think anybody who has a great attitude, it's intentional. It's an intentional decision.
That's right.
And you are, a while ago, Olivia and I did an episode where we talked about, are you a thermostat or a thermometer? Like, do you set the temperature in the room, or do you respond to the temperature in the room? And your attitude is very much that thermostat type attitude. I think everybody kind of, okay, this is the tone we're going to operate off of. So one is attitude, which I absolutely love. And then adventure. Like when we became friends on Facebook, and I started seeing the photos that you have posted, like you're diving out of airplanes, you're in a wingsuit, you're living the adventuresome life. I wish I had the skill set to be able to do. I've jumped out of an airplane once, absolutely loved it. And so, but like, how many jumps do you have in now?
So first of all, we choose our own adventure, Milo. And from
That's
my
true.
perspective, you're living an adventurous life too. And it's just different. But to answer your question, I have about almost 2,000 jumps, but that's over 20 something years. For many years, I averaged about 100 jumps a year, military and civilian jumps. Being an EOD officer, being trained in diving and jumping, I do enjoy snorkeling and breath hold dives and stuff, but I just never really got into scuba diving. But I love parachuting. I've been infatuated with it. There's a whole backstory to why that is, and I'm not going to take up too much time on that, but just from a little boy seeing parachuters jump into the Bama down here on the beach when I was a little kid, World War II vets. I've just loved parachuting. Didn't get into it till I went to jump school when I was 33 years old. But from then on, I really loved it. And yeah, I've gotten into a variety of different disciplines within parachuting, but yeah, about 2,000 jumps. I'd say probably 400 or 500 of those are military. The rest are all civilian, jumping out of civilian jumps and off of objects and so forth.
Well, my sister-in-law, my sister and brother-in-law live in Tullahoma, Tennessee. And it's my understanding that you've jumped there quite a few times. And we got a cadre of listeners out there. So I know they appreciate you valuing that area for a good place to jump.
Yeah. Got out of Tennessee.
Your adventure right now is you are walking the Appalachian Trail.
Yes.
And you are doing this. You retired this year from the military. You enlisted in 1988. Do I have that right?
Correct. Yep. August of 88.
And so how many years of service is that then?
36 years, 7 months, and 3 days. I
Holy
retired.
cow.
I retired the end of March, so I was on terminal leave when I started on March 18th. So I was still active duty. The only one in the Warrior Expeditions group that was still active duty, but I was on terminal leave. So yeah,
That's crazy. And so then, so you retire, and then a handful of weeks, not what is it, a couple months later, you're hiking the Appalachian Trail.
that's right. Well, I did my retirement ceremony in February, but once again, I was still on terminal leave. And then, the end of my active duty service was the end of March, but I left on the 18th. So, but I had been talking about doing this for years. Like in high school, I hiked a few summers, about 70 or so miles each summer with there's an old World War II vet named Oscar McLean that his older son is about 5 years older than me, and my buddy Richie had done it with this group of guys. It wasn't a Boy Scout thing, but it was like associated with Boy Scouts. That's probably how they found out about it. And he took us 3 summers. We would do warm up hikes in the summer, and then we would go do 70 plus miles on the Appalachian Trail, mainly Georgia and North Carolina, and then go whitewater rafting. And it was just a great experience. And I've been talking about, I was just mesmerized by people that could hike that whole way, because we just did about 200 miles in 3 summers, and that was like unbelievable distance for us back then as a young boy. But then Ren and I have been married almost 27 years, and she's heard me talk about it for 27 plus years. So when I was in Spain, I was doing a little bit of hiking, and I was talking about the Appalachian Trail, and she's like, when you retire, you just need to do the through hike." And I was like, "Are you serious?" I was like, "You know how long that'll take?" She's like, "Yep." You. She's always been very supportive of everything, and she said, "Yeah, I want you to do that." So um, one thing led to another. It was pretty cool. We got orders back here working for Naval Education Training Command, um, but with intentions to retire. A year or two after getting there, dropped my retirement papers, and was thinking about what I was going to do next. Still think about the Appalachian Trail. Rim was kind of holding me accountable. Well, how's that going to fit into your Appalachian Trail hike? Well, I don't know, babe. But quite honestly, we have no debt. We don't. We live in an apartment. We don't have a mortgage. We have one car payment. We could afford it. Me retiring to just not work for 6 7 months, and she knew that. So I'm like, all right, well, let's see. Let's see how it works. Well, as Ren says, Facebook knows what you're thinking. It was about March of last year. Something came up on Facebook. It was Warrior Expeditions. And I was like, check this out. So I emailed them and said, "Hey, what is this?" And they're like, "Well, you have to apply. It's for combat vets. If you've served in combat, you can apply." And one thing led to another. So this year I applied and got picked up. So, and I can tell you more about Warrior Expeditions as we go, but yeah, that's basically how I got on the trail and committed to doing it. So
And the trail's like 2,000 miles or something like that, isn't
yeah,
it?
2,200 miles. But we talk about this, all the blue blazes, going to get water 3/4 miles from your shelter, getting off the trail for a mile and a half to get something to eat, all the town walking. I guarantee you I'll walk 2,700, maybe closer to 3,000 miles after I'm done. But yeah, the trail and it goes from Maine to Georgia or Georgia to Maine. I'm hiking northbound from Springer Mountain, Georgia to Maine. It's 2,198 miles, is I think what they say. And the approach trail, which is from Emma Falls to Springer Mountain, the trail actually starts in Springer Mountain, is 8 miles uphill. It's not even part of the Appalachian Trail, but you basically have to do that approach trail to get to Springer Mountain. There is a way to go back roads and then hike up like 2 miles, but I mean, the Emma Falls is such a beautiful hike. Most people do it, but they don't even include that. So right off the bat, you get an extra 8 miles in. So yeah.
So I think it's interesting that Ren has been such a strong encouragement for you to do this, because this could have been very much hey, let's retire from military, figure out what new normal is.
All right.
Your son is graduating from high school, right?
Mhm.
Right. So, capture those last handful of months while he's at home, and then we'll go through the summer. Like, I think that's how a normal person would probably assess how.
I'm definitely not normal. Thanks, Milo. It's true.
Well,
Yeah. Sorry.
like,
Yeah.
but I think that's what I find interesting is, like, that's kind of a typical COA
That's
for
right.
how to sort of find the shallow end of the pool of civilian life, right?
Yeah. Right.
But you guys, it's not just that, like, you looked at your wife and said, "Hey, babe, I'm going to go do this thing. Here's how you can get a hold of me in case of emergencies. I'm out," right?
Right.
Like, she's encouraging this. So that's one of the things I'm always fascinated by is how people order their lives in a way that all of a sudden, when an opportunity presents itself, it's they're kind of already staged to be able to embrace it. So how have you guys done that over the years? Because 36 years of military service, you guys have lived. I know we were in Rhoda together. That's how we know one another.
Right.
Did you live Oconus prior to
No,
that?
no. I mean, I deployed Oconus while we were married.
Okay,
I
sure.
mean, my first 10 years I was single. And then we got married in 98. So we've been married for 27 years of that 36 plus years. Um, but yeah, so a lot of, I did deployments to Iraq, Afghanistan. At one point when I was stationed at SOCOM, I was gone all the time. The boys were really young. It was just, but it's military, and you're told to do it, so it's not,
Yeah,
you're not choosing. Actually, this is the first time in my life retiring that no one's telling me where to go next, right? No one's
yeah.
telling, like, I mean, I joined the Navy right out of high school, so I've always been told where to go next, and it's the first time that I've not been told. So back to, I think the your question you're asking is Ren is like probably I mean, there's some phenomenal Navy military wives out there, but she's perfect for me. Let's just say, I always tell her, you're not perfect, but you're still the best. So, but she's perfect for me. And she has always been very supportive. It's funny when I got picked up for EOD, I wanted to be a pilot. We got my degree in aviation management at Auburn and was working on my pilot's license. I've been an aviation electrician. Thought I was going to be a pilot, but um, things don't always work out like you expect. And as John Wooden said, things work out best for people who make the best of the way things work out. And it totally worked out for me. I chose EOD because my eyesight wasn't perfect back then. You couldn't get your eyes fixed, so that wasn't even an option. So when I got commissioned, I ended up going EOD. But back to Ren, she said, "I'm glad you're not going to be a pilot. That's dangerous." And I said, "That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah." Because EOD is relatively dangerous as well. Um, but in her mind, she's like, "I don't want you to be a pilot. It's dangerous." But she's been very supportive in all the things I've done military, and then like when I continue, she used to go to the drop zone with me. No desire to jump out of a plane, but she would go to the drop zone with me and hang out and lay in the sun and watch us land and hang out with the group. At one point, she said, "I'm done with that because I'm tired of people asking me why I don't jump," and that was understandable. But she was always supportive. Quite honestly, at one point, I mean, for a year, she told me, "I don't want you to base jump. Base jump is jumping off of fixed objects. Like, I do not want you doing that. It's too dangerous." I'm like, "Okay, I'll honor that. I mean, you help me, you support me and everything else. I'll honor that, even though I really wanted to base jump." Um, because it's pretty cool parachuting. But and then at some point, back to her support, I was working in the Pentagon and I came home one day and she's like, "Hey, you know how much I like to support you and I want to support you and everything. And I know how bad you want a base jump." And I was like, and I hadn't talked about it in years, but I'm like, "Well, yeah, I guess." She said, "So if you want to go to Bridge Day this year, go to Bridge Day." And I was like, "Really?" I'm like, "I'm too busy, babe. Bridge Day is an event they have in West Virginia on the New River Gorge Bridge, 876-foot bridge, and they open it up to parachuting one day a year. 876 feet sounds low, but it's actually pretty high for a base jump. So, and it's over water, so a lot of people just land in the water and stuff. So it's relatively safe for a base jump. A lot of folks do their first base jumps there. So anyway, the next day, talk about opportunities. The next day, this skydiving buddy of mine's like, "Hey, I'm going to Bridge Day this year, and and I have a rig for you if you want to use it. Base rigs are different than skydiving rigs, so you have to have a different type parachute system. And I'm like, really? Like, Ren just told me like she supports me going to bridge day. So I came home. All that to say, I got into base jumping for a number of years because she supported me, you know. But that's outside the military. Inside the military, my command job, she was never big in doing the wife thing, getting all the wives together. And I was like, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. You do what you do best. And so, not only did she support me, I didn't try to push her into and I'm sure you've seen this with in your career, not just only in the chaplaincy corps with leadership positions and stuff, but your time on a ship where you may or may not have seen an XO that was trying to be an XO as opposed to being who he is and doing his XO job. XOs are considered the bad guy, and the COs and this is not always true, but there's a thought there that the XO's the tough one, the CO is Mr. Nice Guy. But where it fails is when people try to be who they're not. And an XO who's a really good dude is trying to be Mr. Tough Guy, mean to everyone, and it doesn't work out. It's the same thing with Ren. I was like, you do the best you can and support the people in my command and so forth, and it worked. It's worked really good for her, and me as well. So anyway, she's been very supportive along the way.
I think it's, to that point, I think it's to really embrace, the spirit of adventure, which I kind of hold to this premise that God has an adventure for everyone. Now, I might, some of the things you do, I think are that kind of classically fit in the category of adventure. Right. But I think, there's some things that other people do that in light of how God has wired them and designed them. That's right. And their personality, like that is their adventure, right? So this isn't about whose adventure releases the most endorphins, right? Right. But I think to really step into that, to step into the adventure that God has for us, I think there has to be some measure of settled security that I know who I am, and I'm not trying to compete with being someone or something I'm not, or trying to maintain, like you were kind of talking about with the XO, trying to maintain some sort of facade or image that matches what I sense are the perceived expectations of who I'm supposed to be. There's always expectations of what I'm supposed to do.
That's right.
That's a different thing, but who I'm supposed to be. And so I'd be curious to know from you, like for me, I probably wasn't 36. I was probably 36 when I really settled into, oh, this is who I am. Yeah. Like, I know what I'm good at. I've had enough experiences. I know what I'm not good at. I'm really confident in these things. And I can celebrate the things that I'm not confident in, that I have I have buddies that are good at those things. I'm glad they're good at those things. I don't feel like desire to compete or any of that kind of stuff. Like for you, when did that settle in for you? Do you know?
It's still settling in, right? So, I mean, I'm still figuring out who I am, but I would say my late 20s, early 30s. Okay. And especially as I do want to talk about something you're talking about the adventure stuff. I will tell you my biggest fear my whole life, because I ain't very articulate, right? As I like to say, Ren says, like, I don't know why you say that. But my point is public speaking or speaking on this podcast, like that, but opportunities present themselves. And I believe because I am a man of faith, I believe God presents those opportunities. And you seize them. You're a very good public speaker. I mean, you're a pastor, you're a preacher, and you're very good. But were you always that way? I don't know. Were you? No. And the first times you do it, it's like the first time you jump out of a plane. People joke that it was a night jump because your eyes were closed because you're so scared, right? But the more you do it, because it was an opportunity that God presented, and you're like, all right, here I am. I mean, I didn't ask to go to jump school. When I went to jump school at 33, uh, they had just opened one, and everybody graduating Navy EOD would go to jump school. So it's not like I was like put it in my wish list. I want to go to jump school. I showed
Right.
up, and it was an opportunity, and I showed up and did the best I could and figured it out. And the more you did it, the more comfortable. You're still scared every time you do it. It's like public speaking. For me, I don't know about you. Um, my command tour, I was the CEO of the dive school. A lot of until COVID kicked off. A lot of public interactions, asked to come and speak to the community. And, I'm doing graduations every week with parents. Some of these parents are, generals and admirals that come and their kids are graduating. So it's, people from all over, famous people that have kids that come through school. And you're like, but you do the best you can and you don't get intimidated. And as a man of faith, you're just like, hey, I'm going to represent myself, my family, my service, my God, the best I can, do the best I can. And if they don't like the way I speak, hey, it is who I am. So I think, I'm kind of answering two parts of your question, but I think where opportunities present themselves, so long as you show up and do the best you can and progress as you go, whether it's jumping, whether it's public speaking, whatever. And then when did I get comfortable with that? I mean, I'm continuing to get more comfortable or figure out what opportunity. Like, what am I going to do next after my Navy career? That's part of the reason I'm doing this Appalachian Trail. It's really giving me some good soak time. Man, I've been thinking, my first month on the trail, I didn't use my phone for podcasts, music, nothing. I would check in with Ren in the evening, um, let her know I'm at the campsite and I'm safe. But other than that, that was it. And I use this Far Out app that helps you navigate. It's very good, gives you a lot of good intel on the trail. But that's it. Consciously, because I'll tell you, Milo, having two cell phones and being 24/7 on the phone is probably, people talk about PTSD. That's like some of the most trauma I've had over the 15, 20 years of my career, just because I was tied to a phone all the time and getting phone calls in the middle of the night, having to have your phone. So I cut away from that and just walking, listen to the birds. Of course, you meet people and you're talking about stuff, but a lot of alone walking, and it helped me really think through some things. So, what am I going to do next? Is one thing that's like, I don't know, but I know that God's going to present opportunities, and I'm praying that it's an opportunity where I'm going to provide, as much value as Sam Brasfield can. So it's where I'm meant to be, and it's so it's exciting, it's scary, just like jumping out of a plane, just like public speaking. But I know God's in charge, and I'm not gonna stress it. So
So I'd like to know more about that because it's what it's been like to be on this trail, because that's a different pace
yes,
than the pace you've had. You just kind of referenced some of that. Before we get into that, I don't know your faith story or your faith journey,
sir,
and because I imagine that's shaping how you're choosing to approach the trail.
sir. Yeah. So I grew up in a Presbyterian church, going to church pretty much every Sunday. Grandfather leading hymns before church, and I have fond memories of it. But I was a pretty wild youth. So in high school days, had divorced parents, a lot of drama with that. Went down the wrong path big time in high school. Ended up having to repeat the 10th grade. Um, so I was brought up in the church, but I didn't have a relationship with Christ. I'd heard the gospel, but I didn't know the gospel. I didn't understand it, or just never stuck with me. Right? I never just didn't hear it. Um, and then joined the Navy in 1988, and I was going through A school. Back then. All the aviation A schools were up in Millington, Tennessee, which is now Bureau of Personnel, and down here in Pensacola is where all the aviation A schools are. But I was going through A school there, pretty long A school. It's like 6 month A school to be an aviation electrician. And Bellevue Baptist Church had a program where they would come and pick up sailors and Marines and stuff on Sundays, take you to church, feed you, that kind of stuff. And then they had some other events, trips, and stuff that you could sign up for and stuff. It was just a really good, you know, mission to the military. They had a name for it. That wasn't what it was. I'm trying to think. Just outreach to the military there. Um, and I finally actually heard the gospel. Like I really, it stuck with me. There was a former Marine assistant pastor who was in charge of the, you know, outreach to the military, and he talked about the gift, right? Like it's a gift for everyone. Salvation is a gift for everyone, but everybody doesn't take that gift, right? Everybody doesn't accept that gift. And someone could be handing you a gift, and if you don't take it, if you don't accept it, it's not yours until you accept it. And that really, the whole we've all sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We all deserve hell. Why Christ, Jesus came to die for us and so forth. It all made sense then. Um, so, but then in 36 years, I lived a sailor's life. I was 7 years, made a couple med deployments. Young sailor turned 21 on a ship overseas. It's just, our faith journey is just our life journey. It's hot peaks and valleys. But I was always grounded in my faith. I was always reading my Bible, trying to be around people of faith, attending church when I could. And then I went to college at Auburn, and really my faith really started growing, being consistently with people of faith, going to consistently with church. I dated a lot of different girls at Auburn because, man, that first time. So my first 7 years in the Navy, I was not really around women. We didn't have women in the Navy. My shore duty, we had a few females, but like we just didn't have women. So the only place you met girls.
This was on because you were an electrician's mate, correct?
That's right. I did 2 deployments on the forestall. We didn't actually. My second deployment, we had the first female on a ship, and she was like a shooter, a officer, aviation officer. I might have seen her twice. So we didn't. So very rarely, other than church, when I was home from deployment or whatever, I was not around women, girls. And I went to Auburn, and man, it was awesome. Like I met tons of girls, and it was great. And I was dating a girl for about a year who I really liked, but just knew God. It just didn't feel like she was the one for me. And I ended up breaking up with her and just, you're a great girl, but it's just, I don't know, it's not going to work out. The next day I met Ren at a triathlon, but I was not interested in dating, because I just broken up with a girl. So it was a couple months before we started dating, um, one thing led to another, and back to my faith, and we started dating seriously, and I just knew it. I was like, she's the one for me, and ended up getting married. Ren grew up Baptist, very good. I came from a divorced, broken family, very difficult family life. I do have an older sister and a younger sister. They're 3 years apart. I'm in the middle, so we're like, my mom had 3 kids in 3 years, and we in high school and stuff we weren't that close, but we're very close now. Um, but Ren grew up with a family. You're just a phenomenal mom and dad and brother, and just a great group of folks that went to church all the time, and they're just strong believers. So through our time in the Navy and moving around, we've explored different churches, all Christian churches, Bible teaching churches, but we've attended Catholic churches, but we've never really, you know, consistently attended. We've been with friends and stuff, but usually Protestant churches. Um, we each move we would find a different denomination, pretty much. Not intentionally, but it just worked out that way. And I think that helped me grow a lot too, because I saw positives and negatives to different denominations, right? And it's funny. Buddy on the trail the other day, it was Palm Sunday. I was like, "Oh, today's Palm Sunday," and he's Catholic, and he's like, "Oh, you guys celebrate Palm Sunday?" I was like, "What's the story of Jesus, right?" Like, yeah, everybody's. I mean, not necessarily celebrate it, but like we recognize Palm Sunday, right? So it's just funny because people from different denominations, they get so wrapped around that. And I think there's positivity to different denominations, different strengths and stuff. But I just saw back to my faith journey, me trying different denominations. And being a chaplain, a lot of times you only have one church, one Protestant service. And it's people from all different denominations.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, it's some of the best worship I've been to, right? Um, so anyway, there's a lot of positive to that. And anyway, so that's kind of my faith journey, and it continues, right? So on the trail, I've just been doing my best to listen to God through quiet, through others, through I was really consistent on doing for a number of years. I've tried to read the Bible through a year, and I've gotten 3 4 months into it, and then I skip a few days and stuff. And I was really consistent. I started the trail. I was consistent for about the first month, and I've skipped some days, but I'm still picking up. But my point is getting in the Word, whether it's doing your daily Bible reading, memorizing verses. That kind of stuff. So listening, hearing God, and just praying. We there's a few guys that I've been consistently hiking with, just because it's weird. You don't intentionally say, "All right, we're going to be together every day," but you end up being together, and you might not hike together the whole day because somebody walks ahead or whatever. But you stay, and there's a few guys that I've been with, and this last about a week and a half ago, we were together for probably a week, and we started every day talking about what we were grateful for, and we would just awesome, and just hearing each other talk about things that you're grateful for, and we're all this group, we're all believers, so it was able to share stuff. I've hiked with a bunch of dudes that aren't believers that are like seeking. I prayed with guys. And I'm emotional because I'm not sad. I'm like excited about it, but I'm like, it brings up emotion. There's one dude named his trail name's Lost Boy. I think he gave himself that name. And one day, and I'd met him a couple times, he's covered with tattoos, tattooed on his face. He's older than I thought he was. He told me he was like 52, and I thought he was probably in his late 30s. But he looked, rode hard. You can tell. But one day I just asked him, I was like, "Hey, why is your name Lost Boy?" He said, "Well, I'm lost. I'm trying to figure out what's next." And I didn't say anything to him. It was just me and him. I didn't say anything to him, but that's why I have opportunities on the trail. Well, a few days later, me and Sherpa, who's another dude in the group that's been hiking with me, he's one of the guys that I was talking about, that we talking about what we're grateful for and stuff. We stopped off. Are you familiar with trail magic?
Mm-mm.
So along the trail, it's wild in Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. We saw tons of it. Virginia, we hadn't seen much, but sometimes it's just timing. But you come across a crossroad, and there are people out there in their cars. Some people grilling, and it's just trail magic. They just have food, they have beer, they have all sorts of stuff, and they're like, "Hey, trail magic, have a seat." They have chairs where you can sit down. They have, and they just provide trail magic. Well, one day, Sherpa and I were hiking. We were doing a slack pack, meaning somebody had dropped us off 20 miles up the road without our heavy pack, just what we needed. So you can cover a lot more. I'm carrying about 40 pounds, 35 to 40 pounds, but now I'm carrying like 10 to 15, and you can do it one day. So we were doing a slack pack one day. Somebody dropped us off. We're walking along. We hear there's trail magic at the bottom of the hill. We get down there, and it's this big church bus that this family, their church had this church bus that they weren't using. And the church said, "Hey, what are you guys are doing trail magic on the weekend?" Like, "Yeah, why don't you use our bus?" So they set this bus up into like a trail magic bus. So, we show up, and they're like, "Yeah, come in our bus, sign in." And they have all this food, and, you get to sit down for a bit, rest your feet. And Lost Boy was in there. And another couple hikers that we think, and it just came to mind. I was like, "Hey, hey, how's it going, Lost Boy? You know everybody by their trail name. That's how you get to know everybody. And we were eating, and he was pigging out on some pulled pork sandwiches. He was loving it, right? And he was smiling. First time I'd seen him smile. I'd seen him smoking dope, but I hadn't seen him smiling. And and I just felt the calling to like pray for him, and I asked the family. I was like, "Hey, can I pray?" And I prayed for Lost Boy and Mama's Boy and Sherpa and everybody that was in there. And then we left. We hiked down, and a couple miles later, I was like, man, I should just straight up looked at him and spelled the gospel out and said, even though I did pray for him by name, and I should just straight up done it. And Sherpa's like, no, you did the right thing. And I was like, you're right, but I'm 2 miles down the trail. One side of me was like, I should turn around and go back and do that. But I was like, I'll see him. Unfortunately, it's been a few weeks. I had to see him on the trail. Maybe I will. My point in telling you this is, I believe, is what's most important is we listen to God. When we hear Him, we answer what He tells us to do, and we obey. You know, Obeying to go turn around. The Samaritan that stopped on the side of the road and helped the guy. Is one thing, but I would have been the Samaritan that kept walking and then turned around and came back. Maybe I should have done that. And I've been praying since then. I'll have the opportunity. I'll run into Lost Boy again. Um, I hope I will. Anyway, long-winded question on my faith journey, but I think that walks you through from when I became a Christian all the way to present day where I'm at. So,
Well, so thank you for sharing that, because I hadn't thought about this on how I imagine walking this trail, the metaphors that I'm sure are popping up as to how it relates to the spiritual journey God wants to put us all on.
yeah,
The people that we meet that are unexpected. How many of these experiences did you anticipate? Like, did you anticipate to be able to find this group of guys that you could pray with, or that you could share, highlights of what's good in life first thing in the morning? Did you anticipate coming across Lost Boys? Like, I don't know. I could see like a lot of the initial briefing focused on how are you going to survive on the trail? How are you going to, physically endure?
yeah,
But you're talking about things that, get into the fiber of your soul.
yeah. No, I think I did anticipate it. I think I'm excited about it. It's just like in everyday life, people in my office, that I've come across that I can relate with, and that I can pray with and have studies with, and so forth. It's just different on the trail because you now I will tell you the Warrior Expeditions group, it was almost so there's a term on the trail they call them tramilies, trail family. And you will see groups of people that pretty much stay together, and they didn't know each other until they met them on the trail. With the Warrior Expeditions group, it was almost like we had an instant family, because with Warrior Expeditions, we all apply. We're all combat vets. I'm the only Navy guy that's all Army. There's two cohorts, the group that I started with and the group that started a week behind me. I've only met one person from the group that started behind me because he called us. The rest are, I see them on social media and I hear about them via the Warrior Expedition group, but I have not met them yet. Actually, I take that back. I did meet a couple because they came and gave us trail magic before they started the trail. There were two guys that I met. So I have met a few people. But the point is instantly we started with this my group was a group of 9. And we were only expected to hike together for the first 4 days. That was all. We had to stay together for the first 4 days. It was part of the training to help us be successful. And then after that, we're on our own. But we stayed together. That group of 9, well, 8, because one guy decided that it wasn't for him at this time in life. He got to Neil Gap and he had a young boy at home. And he decided not to do it. So we were at 8. But that group of 8, we stayed together for like 175 miles. And the Warrior Expeditions folks have told me like nobody does that. And we saw that with the second group. There was guys that took off right off the bat and the group split up. But we stayed together as a group of 8. So back to your question, did I anticipate that? Yeah, I definitely anticipated that. I anticipated like meeting lifelong friends there. I anticipated, you know, listening to God and seizing opportunities, just like we you know I think we should do in everyday life, right? I'm a big like I really like people. I just do. I enjoy people, even people that annoy me. And I'll tell you, there was 2 people. Maybe I shouldn't say this on open source, but I will. It's honest. There was 2 people because we met each other. The Warrior Expedition group met each other in VTCs a couple of times, video teleconferences like Zooms, before we came together in you know Georgia before we started hiking. We did some training for a day and then we started hiking. And there were a couple guys in the VTCs kind of annoyed me, right? And I even told Ren, one guy in particular, I even told Ren, I was like, this guy's a trip. And I was like, he's kind of annoying, but you know what? Watch out, he'll be my best friend. And sure enough, I intentionally hiked with him. It was actually the 2 youngest guys in the group, and I think the reason they annoyed me is because I had the least in common with them. Like I don't know, it was just like it just it doesn't really matter why they annoy me. We all have different reasons people annoy you, or you really like them, you're drawn to them. But intentionally for the first week hung back, hiked with him, talked with him, and man, what a phenomenal guy! And I just bonded with him. Now, unfortunately, he twisted his knee early, or not early on, probably around 250 miles, and fell back. He had to take some off time. That's part of the reason we separate because I got sick and had to be off the trail for 4 days. I got a stomach virus. It was really bad. And I was ahead of people. Now some of those people that I was ahead of catch you or pass you. So it just kind of happens. But he's still on the trail. He's doing good. I'm going to give real details about him, but I do want to kind of spell out what I'm talking about. Young, relatively young, mid 30s, did a good while in the Army. But when he got out of the Army, he went off the beaten path, got 5 DUIs, got into using crystal meth. Real rough time. Probably a lot of it was from some experience he had in the Navy that didn't help. But now he's just pulled it together and he's got such a heart. He's still who he is. I mean, he's a character. But he and I had some really good discussions about faith, and he's a believer. He gets it. I know for a fact. Just the discussions we talk. It's not for me to decide. That's between him and God. But there are fruits of the spirit, and I know. Just talking to him, and we just bonded. But anyway, a guy who Army young guy soldier that was probably a very difficult soldier to manage. And then got out of the Army and went down the wrong path. And now he's pulled himself together. So it's just really neat to see. And then there's guys that I've been hiking with since then from the group who are like me. One guy's a retired colonel with 37 years. He was enlisted for like 70 years and then Army colonel. And he and I are a lot alike. And we get along great. So anyway, I think that answers your question.
Well, and I think that's, considering that as a metaphor for life, one of the things that years ago, I kind of tripped onto this principle that Bethany and I have sort of held on to, which is the bigger your world is, the smaller your problems are. But the smaller your world is, the bigger your problems are. Mm-hmm. And one of the ways, I think some people hear that, or I've shared it with folks and they think, well, I don't like to do a lot of travel. And it's like, well, traveling helps you get your world big, but figuring, using the trail as a metaphor, like being willing to walk with people that you wouldn't normally do life with makes your world bigger. It exposes you to ways of thinking and decisions and, challenges maybe some biases or assumptions you have about topics or issues. Yeah. And I think it's, like, and it exposes the things you don't know, in a way that's, can be formative. It's not an embarrassing thing, right?
Yeah.
It's a way that's like, oh, I didn't know that. Now I know that. And like,
Right.
I didn't know what trail magic was. I saw you posted that on Facebook, and I thought, is that a psychedelic they get on the?
Yeah. Well, believe it or not, there are trail magics that you steer away from. On April 20th, we walked through. It was 420 day, which I don't know if you know that reference, but that's like a dope smoking reference.
Yeah.
And there was bottles of liquor. There was place, and you steer away from. There's actually a lot of that crap on the trail, but it's an opportunity also to reach out to people. So.
Again, man, talk about a powerful metaphor, right?
That's
like,
right.
man,
That's
there's not every pit stop on the trail is going to help you finish the journey.
That's right.
Is going to help you get, it may be fun for the moment, but man, you're going to be feeling it in a day or two.
That's right. So I heard an interesting, statistic when I was just in Harper's Ferry, and I went to the ATC, which is the Appalachian Trail Conservancy Visitor Center, and they said that less than 20% of the people that start the trail every year finish. And we've talked about this a little bit along the way about how people, why people don't finish and stuff. And a lot of times they get sidetracked with drugs, alcohol, stuff that was in their life. Of course, things happen. You have a death in the family, you have to go home, or someone's sick, or whatever. Things happen, or you get injured. A lot of those people get injured. But when you choose to do something that has a high likelihood of derailing you, it's like, why do that? So, I've talked to guys like, hey, don't you think this could divert you from the trail? Yeah. Okay. Drink one cold beer at a Trail Magic, but if you're going to drink 5 or 6, you think you're going to hike? No. And then they have an event called Trail Days, which was here back in May, and it's in Damascus, which is one of the first towns in Virginia. It's a big event every year. A lot of vendors come and stuff, but it's known as like a party place. And they say that a lot of the people that go back to Trail Days, they end up not even finishing the trail because if they have problems with that stuff, they go there and then it's just, they're derailed. That's back to life, right? It's true about life. If you can stay on, your faith journey, you don't just surround yourself with believers, but you need to have a core group of believers that are going to hold you accountable and you can talk to and you can share. I've had tons of buddies that say, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church. Well, God didn't tell you, there's nowhere it says you have to go to church, but like I will tell you, it will help you in your faith journey to be around believers. And then also, I worship in my own way. Well, I got it, but there's one way. Being in the Word consistently. All those things will help you in your journey. There's other things that will divert you from your journey, and you see the same stuff on the trail. But anyway.
Well, and I think too that the thing that could divert me, it might not be the thing that would divert you.
That's right.
I think that's the, that's the thing that gets exposed as you're, when you're doing something like this. I imagine the different terrains that you're having to navigate. There are some folks that they look at one terrain and go like, man, this is going to be rough. And there may be somebody else in the group that's like, this is the part I actually enjoy.
That's right.
It in some ways, it's less about the thing and more about the internal, capabilities and weaknesses that a person carries as to how they navigate the trail. Well, in this case, literally the trail they're on, but even figuratively, the trail of life that they're on. That, one of the things Olivia and I talk about on this podcast is, lineage. It's resilient lineage, right? How do we build a family that is resilient? That our name means something from generation to generation to generation. And it's something that it's not set in concrete. It's something that's nimble and it grows, but it grows towards God's best with each generation. one of the things that there's kind of two things I'd like to know from you. One is, you said a couple times now that, the chance to hear from God as you're on the trail. So I'd really love to know, what have you heard from the Lord through this period? That maybe you wouldn't have been able to hear if you had just kind of done the quote unquote normal thing, right?
Yeah.
So what have you heard God do? And then, like, as you're doing this, or as you look back on the last 36 years, and coming from a broken home, but you and Ren have built a great life with Peyton and Hampton, and like the Brasfield name means something that is respectable and honorable. So, like, we'll kind of maybe those two parts, but like, what are you hearing on God? And then what does it mean to be a Brasfield?
Yeah. So I've heard a lot from God, and, obeying and so forth. But the one thing that has really been, of course, it's forefront of my mind, is what's next for me. And I've had a number of job offers, but it was pretty cool. Most of the people, when I'd say, well, I'm not going to be available until fall of 25 because I'm doing this Appalachian Trail. Everybody was very supportive. Oh yeah, that's great. I wish I would have done that, or that's a good thing. But as I've been on the trail, I've just been really thinking, reflecting back to my time in high school when Oscar McLam took two little hoodlums out on the trail 3 summers in a row, not just Appalachian Trail, but the warm up hikes and stuff. And all the discipline that I learned through that, the adventure, and the value it provided me later on in life. And I've been thinking about how, for what I want to do next. So Warrior Expeditions is actually, it's a program to help transitioning vets who have struggled through traumatic, stress. And and it's proven. He's been doing it for 13 years. We should probably put a link to warriorexpeditions.org in your show notes so people can read more about it, because I could tell you all about it. But something that God's been speaking to me is like, it's phenomenal, but it's almost after military service. I think there's so much value in doing things for our youth and our 18 to 25-year-olds that prepare them for whether they go into the service, whether they go into the ministry, whatever, that adds value later on in life. And I was just guys have been speaking to me. It's like, Oscar McLam allowed you guys to learn, and that group that you're with, is a lot of things that kids don't get these days. Athletics, the kids that do athletics, a lot of them do, because they learn, positive self-talk and visualization and preparing and doing all these different disciplines is what I call them. We already talked about spiritual disciplines, memorizing verses, reading your Bible, being around believers, worship, all that stuff. But there's a lot of things that help us with discipline for later in life, for resiliency, that I think kids aren't getting. And I say kids, but I mean young adults and kids. They're not getting. And so God has really been speaking to me. Maybe what's next for you is, I even met a group of kids, and I've looked up the website, and I intend to go visit the place. But it's called Narrow Gate. And one night I showed up at a campsite at a shelter. It was packed. It's like 20 young adults, guys. And they were pretty loud. It was sunset, and I was fixing my food, and I was like, I'm gonna go over and talk to some of these guys. Learn to talk to them, and they're part of a program. And some of them, and I'm not going to tell you everything I learned, but it was very similar to what God was speaking to me about. Maybe, Sam, what you need to do, not necessarily start an organization, not necessarily, but get involved with, is on the front end, doing some of this stuff, these disciplines and adventure, to help the American youth, when they become adults, be more resilient later in life. So that's one thing. I've even thought about an acronym, like discipline, adventure, resiliency, DAR. I thought about a bunch of different things, and I don't know where it's going to go. Right? I don't know, that I'm going to be starting this nonprofit and doing this stuff. I don't know that, but I do believe God's put it on my heart. Like I received a lot of value that helped me through my career and going through dive school, EOD school, jump school, all the deployments that I did where, those disciplines that I learned helped me later on. You know, the warrior toughness stuff. Like what I like about warrior toughness, and I know you're well versed in all that stuff. What I like about they started that when I was at dive school. I'm like, we're already doing this stuff, but
Yeah.
it wasn't consistent. It wasn't like everybody gets the same amount. And a lot of that stuff, this, it's basic stuff. Like
Yeah.
adults, you're like, people don't know that. No, kids don't get that. They don't, unless they were athletics or they were Boy Scouts or, especially with COVID. There was kids that sat at home for a couple years that didn't learn that stuff. So I think there's a lot of value in teaching that. So I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like. To be determined. I was even talking to a buddy of mine that owns a few businesses down in Tampa. We just did the 4-day or the 4-state challenge from Harper's Ferry to Pennsylvania. He came up. He's a college buddy of mine. He came up and did it. He's a stud, and it was tough, but it's different hiking the trail than running a marathon and all that stuff. But he and I were talking about it. His workers. He's got construction companies and stuff, and I was talking about, hey, do you have a hard time keeping good workers? Oh yeah. It's like, well, what kind of training do you give your supervisors, like our chiefs and our LPOs? We know in the Navy, that's the value. That's why the U.S. Navy is so successful, because we invest in our mid-level leaders, if you will, and they lead and they develop their junior sailors. Well, construction workers, there's no development. They show up for work on time, they're good. They show up late, they're okay because they showed up. They get a DUI, okay, well, we got to hire somebody else because you can't drive anymore. And I was talking to my buddy, it's like, there's so much value we could do for your culture and your different. He's got like 4 different companies all around construction and demolition and so forth. It's like, there's so many different things we could do for those lower level supervisors and the worker bees that would change the culture of your companies and develop them. Anyway, that's kind of what God's been speaking to me. So now to your second question about Brasfield and what it means. I've always told my boys that I want them, they've heard my little sayings that I have for years. Right. First of all, I call Pate, my older boy, P8 the Great. I've called him that since he was a little guy. I call Hamp the Champ. Hamp the Champ. Because it's positive affirmation of who they are. But I used to have a saying, well, I still have it, but they mess with me about it. It's like, Brasfields don't say can't. And then, of course, that would backfire on me. We'd be like, hey, dude, you can't do that. They're like, well, Brasfields don't say can't. I'm like, well, you're not allowed to do that, right? And I have tons of little sayings that I've used to hey, we're Brasfields. I had a mission statement for a while, kind of like we do in the Navy. As far as me and my family, we will worship the Lord, and stuff like that we would put on the refrigerator and try to. But quite honestly, how I've tried to lead my boys is by demonstrating, facing my fears. They know how scared I am of public speaking. They've seen that, and I've talked to them about it. But yet they've been to big events, Veteran Day events where I'm talking to a few hundred people, or, dive school, change of command, and that kind of stuff where I don't look scared, but like I am internally, having to go to the bathroom a couple times before I get up there. You know what I mean? But going out and running a marathon, or when the year I turned 50, I ran a 100-miler, and I was like, to me, it's demonstrating. Neither of my boys are into running. I didn't do it to try to get them to be runners, but I did it to show them, to demonstrate, hey, do hard stuff. doing this Appalachian Trail. Both of them they just loved it. Like Pete, my older boy, who's 23, so Easter weekend they came up to Irwin, Tennessee. Have you ever been to Irwin?
I don't think
It's
so.
Man, it is a neat town. Now it was devastated with Hurricane Helene, but they're coming back. But it's just a neat town. And Easter weekend, Ren, the boys, and the puppy dog came up to stay with me. Ren has a friend that has a house there, so we were able to stay there. And I took them for a hike that day, and we did a slack pack. It was only 8 miles, and it was actually a smooth trail. And they're like, it's funny. About halfway through the trail, I'm in the back of the group, and they're up ahead of me. He's like, "Dad, are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." Why? I was like, "Well, you're going so slow." I'm like, "I'm not going that slow, dude. I'm right with you. I'm just 100 meters behind you." But okay, whatever. Point is I was letting them see it, but also demonstrating it to them. Right, getting out and doing it. My older son, right now has got a job on the beach working. Uh, it's a good season right now doing beach shares and so forth, and it's a good way to make good money, good tips. And he's outside, and he's really loving it. But he's been doing it about a month, and plantar fasciitis has gotten real for him, right? I mean, we're at the point where he's like, "Dad, I think something's wrong with me. My feet are." I mean, I'm sure you've had plantar fasciitis. All military dudes get plantar fasciitis at some point, right? And it hurts. I've had chronic plantar fasciitis for years, and it goes in cycles. But I was able to say, "Hey, buddy, I've had it before and I've pushed through it. You're not going to hurt yourself. It hurts, but you're not going to injure yourself. But do these things, ice, rest, elevate it, be consistent with anti-inflammatories, because you don't just take a Motrin. You got to take it days, and it will get better. It might not go away, but it will get better." Point is like, because he knew I have done this stuff. And I mean, quite honestly, I started Appalachian Trail with bad plantar fasciitis. Right now, knock on wood, my feet are feeling really good. Um, part of it, when your whole body hurts, some things don't hurt as bad because it's relative. But I'm just telling. My point I'm trying to make is, by doing things and they see that, demonstrating things, hard things. And I could go down spiritual stuff, a lot of things we could do. Studying, taking hard courses. So point is by doing it, I think you demonstrate to your kids, and they hear what we say, but they really hear what we do. They watch what you do. And anyway, does that answer your question?
No, it does, and it's so I thank you for sharing that, because I think it's a question that I like asking folks, in this format. But even, you mentioned the warrior toughness stuff. When I was teaching that, the cycles are to commit, prepare, execute, and reflect. And in a lot of ways, you're in that. The trail is giving you big
Yes.
reflection time.
That's right.
And it's a chance to go. The way we teach in warrior toughness, the reflection time is intended to evaluate is what I committed to seen in what I executed. And if something's off on that, then I need to change the way I prepared. So how do I need to be, what I did well then is also because of preparation. So what needs, what do I need to continue doing? And then what needs tweaked? One of the things that I think, to your point about our kids watching us, and one of the things I would teach during the course is I would ask that question, like, what does it mean? We all have our names on our name tape. What does that mean?
That's right.
When that person walks into that, when you walk into the room, when that last name is present in the room, what should people expect? Or what do you want them to expect? And if you're not intentional with it, it will be something, whether you want it to be or not. And I think that's one of the things that I think we can give those that are coming up behind us, whether it's, our kids, they're our family, they have a level of intimacy and front row to the nuances of our life. We share with them our fears and our concerns, and they see how we navigate stress and difficulties and disappointments.
Right.
But then also, like you're talking about, folks that they you mentioned this group that is working with a younger generation to kind of, okay, maybe you weren't given that sort of access to defining what it means, what you should be committing your life to, or the type of person you should be committing yourself to. And I think there's a lot of value in, well, one, thank you for doing what you're doing and stepping into this journey, because I think it's a really good example for a lot of folks. Because I think, there's a lot of folks I hear that are retiring, and it's about, I got to go get another job. We got to be able to pay the bills, or, maybe they've lived fiscally conservative, and they're like, we're going to go I'm going to buy a new recliner and a big screen TV because I just want to sleep in the morning and watch sports all day, which is like, I'm not making a judgment call on either one of those as much as it is how much of that is living intentionally towards the life that God has for you.
Right.
That there's a posture that the Lord wants to draw you into, that sort of, it's all of a sudden you realize, man, this maybe isn't about me. This is about the example I need to be to those that are coming up behind me, the encouragement I can be to my peers, the accountability I can find, regardless of the generation, accountability to those that are older than me and younger than me, and the chance to sort of step into life with a measure of intentional chutzpah, as it were, that isn't manufactured, right? It's not like, I've got to go do something, that I feel is meaningful as the world would define it. It's like, no, I'm stepping into the thing that God has next for me.
Right.
It's like, I was talking with a buddy of mine who's about to retire, and we were talking about whether or not he should have a retirement ceremony. And he was going on and on and on about how he's not going on, and he had all of his reasons. And I was arguing with him on it. And I finally asked him, I said, well, have you even prayed about this? Because he's a man of faith. And he goes, you got me there. I have not prayed about this. I was like, well, maybe you should pray about it. Because, in some ways I kind of view retirement service, the ceremony's not about you. It's about the room of people that got you to that point. Absolutely. Particularly our families.
Oh, I can totally relate with that.
Yeah. Man, this has been so good to sit down and talk with you. So thanks for taking the time to do this. Maybe we'll do this when you're on the other side of the trail, and we'll kind of recap and all the things that I've learned, and maybe discover what's next, because I know whatever it is, man, you're going to be a massive blessing to so many people.
Thank you, Milo.
And a huge encouragement. And if there's anything I can do, or if there's anything that our audience can do, don't hesitate to let me know, and we'll get the word out.
All right. I sure do appreciate it. It's been great talking to you, Milo. I hope to summit Katahdin August 26th, which will be the anniversary of when I joined the Navy. So we'll see. We got a few more months to go, but it's been great. And thank you for what you and Olivia do. I really enjoy your podcasts and the discussions that you guys have. And God bless you guys for what you do. And I can tell you, once again, it's an opportunity I think that you guys saw, and God put it on your heart, and you moved out on it, and you showed up. But you not only showed up, but you do the best you can, which is another metaphor for the trail. There's some days when you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to be out there today. It's rainy, it's cold, it's miserable, but you just show up and you do it, and you make the best of it, and it's all good. So anyway, I love you, buddy. Thanks again. And let me know anything I can do for you. We're praying for you and your family.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you very much.
All right, man, that was such a good conversation. Like afterwards, I just felt really encouraged by it.
I have yet to listen to it. I hope you guys enjoyed.
We're not even going to pretend Olivia's listened to it yet.
No, this is like 5 minutes after we did our intro, so we're chilling. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I hope to enjoy it.
Yeah, it's good. It's really, really good. Hey, listen, what we'd love for you to do is to sign up for our newsletter.
Please, guys.
It's a chance for us to be able to be in direct communication with you. You can also follow us on Facebook. You can follow us individually, but we also have a Resilient Lineage Facebook page as well as a Facebook group. You can hunt us down there.
We have an Instagram page.
Resilient Lineage Instagram page.
And TikTok.
TikTok, which I like. We need to be on TikTok because I think it's where a lot of people are at. But anyway, if you're on TikTok, you can find us on TikTok.
Follow us there. We got one follower.
Follow us there.
So if that makes you feel sad that we have one follower on TikTok.
We only have one follower on TikTok? We'll get there.
Yeah, shout out to Melanie Smith, the children's director of our church. Come find us.
Find us on TikTok.
There we go.
We're on YouTube as well. So we're on all the channels as well as any place you get your podcast. Obviously, you're listening to this. So we want to thank you guys for taking the time to listen to this. If you'd like to get a hold of Sam Brasfield, you can reach out to us, hello@thisresilientsoul.com, and then I can relay your message to him. Because as he's walking this trail, he's actually in a remote location and doesn't have a lot of comms availability. But he's given me the opportunity to be able to stay in touch with him. So if there's anything you'd like to get a hold of him, or if you'd like to partner with us, maybe you know someone that would like to be on the podcast, would like to enter into a conversation, we welcome that opportunity. We've got a few more of these coming up. Where we sit down with some folks and have some really, really good conversations. And so we're excited to be able to share those conversations with you guys. We've also got a lot of other things that we're kind of queuing up and that we're working towards. And that's some of what's been driving a lot of our busyness lately. And so we're excited to be able to share those things with you. So thank you all for listening. We appreciate you. Go with God. Be at peace. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are our own. They don't reflect the official policy or position of the United States Navy, the Department of Defense, or the United States government. Any conclusions drawn or statements made are solely our responsibility and shall not be attributed to any affiliated organizations or entities.